Okay, and welcome to episode 1 of the Super Simple Sleep podcast. My name's Amanda Whitaker, and I am the founder of Super Simple Sleep. And this is the first episode of the podcast series. And today I am joined by Mr. Whitaker, Lee. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
Lee, how long have we been married for?
You can't start off with the difficult questions. You see, we've been married since 2015.
Yeah.
We have October the 24th, if you want to be exact.
Well done. Brilliant. Okay, that's the hardest question over and done with.
Perfect.
So what we're going to be doing is just like a whistle-stop tour of our parenting journey, really, with our little boy Jack, who is about to turn 6. Just basically what it was like for us as new parents, sleep struggles, how we overcame them, and basically how I became a sleep expert now. Just to give people an idea of kind of who I am and how I got here. Okay. So our little Jack arrived June 2017.
He did.
And do you remember our very first night at home when we got back from the hospital at all?
No.
Okay, that's fine. I will remind you because I remember like it was yesterday. So obviously before he arrived, we had lots of kind of family and friends kind of tell you what it's like to have a newborn. And I just genuinely thought that we'd get home from the hospital, and when it was time to go to bed, we would all go upstairs to the bedroom, and I would like lay him down in his Moses basket, and he'd sleep for an hour or two. He'd wake up for a feed. I'd feed him, and he'd go back off to sleep, you know, a few times a night because he's a newborn. But the very first time we went upstairs and I tried to lower him into the Moses basket, he just kicked off. Right? And I remember saying to you, go and find the joke dummy. Okay. My aunt had bought me a joke present for my baby shower of a dummy.
Yes.
Yeah, because obviously she's very old school and she's like, we don't give babies dummies. And she just bought it as a joke. But part of me now thinks maybe it wasn't a joke. Maybe it was if you really need it, it's here. And I remember hanging on to it, just thinking, just in case, you know. So I remember saying to you, go and find the joke dummy. We found the joke dummy, and it settled him a bit. And you said to me, you go to bed, I'll take him downstairs and stay up with him for a little bit more to see if I can settle him. And then, you know, we'll come up later. And then I think I said to you, oh, wake me up at like 2:00 or something and like we'll swap if you need to. But you didn't. You just took him downstairs and then I didn't see you the rest of the night. And so you stayed up all night with him and I slept. And then like we tag teamed each other in the morning. Then you went upstairs to sleep and I
yeah.
And that's how things went really. For a long time, didn't they? Like we were really fortunate. You had a lot of time off of work, and kind of that's what we did. And I just thought that was a little bit normal. I just thought, oh, all newborn babies just like don't sleep at all because he wouldn't even let us put him down in his Moses basket. And it was really great that you were letting me get some sleep. But then when you then went up to sleep during the day, I just felt like we were like really missing out on like that kind of first bit of like family time.
Yeah.
But that's basically how things went. And like I said, I thought that was like quite normal. And obviously he had really bad reflux as well.
Yes,
so like, do you remember like his favorite sleeping position on you?
Yeah, so to be fair, that was some of my favourite times when he was a baby. I just sort of have him sat upright on here, sort of sat sat sort of quite upright as well, and then that's the only way he would sleep. He wouldn't. So if you tried to lay him down, he would stir and he'd cry. So he sort of nestled in, nice and upright and nice. But yeah, like I said, I enjoyed those. I enjoyed those nights. They were good times.
Yeah.
If only you do that now.
No, I don't think you'd fit.
No.
So like I felt like we muddled through and we were okay. But then like you went back to work, and then back then you were working 12-hour shifts, and you were doing 7 days on and 7 days off. And the 7 days that you were off, absolutely fine. We could like cope with it fine. But the 7 days that you were at work, like you used to be up and out before we got up, and then you went back until like after bedtime.
No, that's it.
And I think that's when I really started to struggle with everything, really. Like during the day, I literally couldn't even lay him down. I couldn't like put him down at all. And I remember feeling resentful of you. The fact that you could, honestly, the very fact that you could get up from your seat at work, go and use the toilet, take your time, not have to rush back, go and make a cup of tea if you wanted to, and not have a screaming baby screaming at you to like do it quicker because he needed to be picked up. Like that's like very small thing. I was jealous that you got to do that. Okay. And also a bit of like, he doesn't know what it's like to do it all day, every day on your own for like a period of 7 days. So I think that's when I really started to struggle. I think that's when I realised that not every other baby was doing that as well. Yeah. So obviously we had friends and families that had babies that weren't too far off the age of Jack, and they'd be quite content, like in their little kind of swing or the little bouncer or on the mat, or they would at least sleep somewhere else other than like their parents' arms. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, well, Jack doesn't do that at all. And then I was like, well, kind of what's wrong with him? And I remember especially going to the baby sensory class. Yeah. There was one at the top of the road, and I went, and he must have been about 10 or 11 weeks old. And we all sat around in a circle, introducing ourselves and talking about our babies. And I remember I was last, and everyone else was like, oh, this is baby so-and-so. And they all mentioned sleep. They were all like, oh, she's sleeping really well. She's sleeping for about 8 hours. And oh, she's a dream. And like and I thought that's really odd. Like everyone's like mentioning how well their baby sleeps. Like that's the last thing I would like mention. And then Jack was laying there, and remember, he just like used to be sick all the time. Laying down on his back, he would be sick, and that's exactly what he was doing, was just like being sick. And I was like, oh. And then he was crying because on his back, and obviously his reflux was hurting. And then they got to me, and I was like, what do I say? Because he doesn't sleep for 8 hours. He doesn't sleep for 1 hour at all. And I think I just lied. I was like, he sleeps well, he sleeps great. And I think that's when I really was like, well, is there something wrong with him then? Like more than that, like, is there something wrong with me as a mother? Because yes, I had like the instincts of being able to keep him alive. Like I knew I had to feed him. I knew I had to bath him. I knew I had to change his nappy. I knew I couldn't let him near dangerous things. Like all those types of feelings were like really natural. But when it came to getting him to sleep, I literally didn't know what to do. I didn't have a clue. And so obviously I was on Google a lot. So do you remember some of the stuff that we got? So we got You and the Sheep.
Yeah, You and the Sheep.
You and the Sheep. Back then, he only played the white noise for 20 minutes at a time, and you had to go back in and press his little paw. We had Ewan. We bought like one of those wedges that went in his Moses basket, because
the positioner.
That's it. Yeah, because we thought he was more comfortable on his side, which he was. But then you read something else on Google that says that they're really dangerous.
Yeah.
We'd bought that white wedge pillow type thing.
Yeah.
That he used to sleep on as well, but that didn't help. I think we spent
the bouncy chair.
Yeah.
Thing that sort of gently bounced, didn't it?
Yeah.
So we ended up getting severe sleep better in that, and that didn't work, did it?
No, I feel like we spent a lot of money on a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, we did.
It just didn't help him. And I remember one night you were like weren't finishing until like 2:00 in the morning. I think you came home, and I was just sat up in bed with him, and he was crying, and I was crying, and I was like, I literally just don't know what to do. Like, I feel like I tried everything that the internet says.
Yeah.
And nothing has worked. He had a dummy, like the dummy continued, didn't it?
Yeah.
And the dummy, it did settle him, but I remember there was one night we put him to bed at like 7, and I think I was texting one of my friends, and it was then 7:45, and I remember saying to her, he's been down for 45 minutes and I've been up to his bedroom 10 times to put the dummy back in and to try and settle him back to sleep.
Yeah.
It just, the moment it like fell out of his mouth or it wasn't on his lips anymore, he was like, I'm awake, and I need this dummy back. Do you remember being in the hospital though, and we had one midwife that came round who showed us how to swaddle him?
The swaddles, yeah.
Yeah, and he seemed really content, didn't he? And then the next shift, a different midwife came round, and she was like, "We don't swaddle babies in this country anymore." And like,
she was like horrified, wasn't she? Weird, almost like we're torturing the baby. Yeah,
like ripping the blanket off, and then you're like, "Oh, so," and then again, you're reading on the internet, like swaddling's okay, swaddling's not okay, and I was like, "Well, which one is it?" And what do I do? Like we said, he was clearly more comfortable sleeping on his side, but then it was like, don't put your baby, don't let them sleep on their tummy, don't use the positioners, and it was conflicting, it was confusing, and it just made me feel really lost with exactly what to do. And this was before like mum's Facebook groups and sleep Facebook groups. Just Google, just telling, but it's the same thing. It's various different people telling you various different things that just didn't work. So he was 4 months old.
Yep.
And I think reality is set in. You were definitely properly back to work, and I think it was really consuming for me. Like every day and every night, all I could think about was how to get him to sleep.
Yeah.
And why wasn't he sleeping? And like constantly comparing him to other babies around us or other babies in general, just like walking up the road and there's like a nice baby just laying asleep in their pram. I'm like, well, he's done that for 5 minutes and now he's awake and he's not going back to sleep. Like what's, So I think it really made me question my parenting ability and like, well, what's wrong with him? Why can't he sleep at all without being held, without the dummy, without whatever it might be? Even with all those things, he still wasn't sleeping consistently or for any like periods, like blocks of time, was he? We put him in the bed in the end, didn't we? We put him in the bed.
Okay, I miss those cuddles. Love the cuddles. Oh man.
You liked them, but I was nothing but paranoid. I was so worried about him being in the bed. So even though I remember like turning over and like, you're asleep, he's actually asleep, but then I'm not asleep because I'm so worried.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I didn't like want to get into. I didn't want that to be like our solution because it wasn't a solution.
It's not a long-term solution, no.
So I think on one of my many nights of being on Google when he's awake, I basically came across a Facebook ad on Facebook, and it was of a sleep consultant. And back then I didn't even know that like that was a thing. I didn't know what a sleep consultant was or anything. And she was just like, does your baby do this? Does your baby constantly wait? They have to be held during nap, so you can't constantly putting the dummy back in. And literally everything that was said on this ad, I was like, yeah, that's Jack. That's him. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it basically said like book a free 15-minute call. And I think I did. I don't even think I told you about it. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna, what's the worst that can happen?
No.
It's a free 15-minute call. I'm just gonna see like what she says. And I remember talking to her on the phone, and I remember thinking, oh, but she won't be able to help us because Jack's really, like, his sleep is really bad. And at the end of the conversation, she was like, oh, I can definitely help you. This is very common. This is very normal. And yeah, I can fix this for you. And for the first time, I like sighed a relief. I was like, what? So other babies do this? She's like, yeah, it's really common. He's at the 4-month mark. This is really common for this kind of age bracket. This is the ideal time to change things now. She mentioned the 4-month sleep progression. And this is it. I can get him sleeping 12 hours a night. And I was like, but my baby's really difficult. I know you say that, but my baby is really stubborn and he's really difficult and he cries a lot. He really cries a lot. The moment if you don't get to him within 5 minutes, he is kicking right off. She's like, yeah. I deal with stubborn babies all the time. And I was like, okay, fine. And I remember saying to you, because obviously I was still on maternity leave then, I wasn't back at work.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember the conversation we had? I think it probably just went, look, I really want to do this. And you were like, yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, it was pretty much along those lines, yeah.
Yeah. Because like I know it's hard to remember back, but I don't know if you ever remember like going off to work, and I don't know if you ever thought about like how I was coping at home or during the night when you weren't there.
I knew it'd be tough, like I said, because I was doing almost doing a night shift with him anyway, and then for me to go off to work, but at least when we were both off for that good amount of time, at least if you wanted to go and have a shower or just go for a walk around the shops maybe, or just get out of the house for 10 minutes. Obviously that was something you was able to do when we were both there, or we were both able to do. But me going off to work for a 12-hour shift, I'm at the house 14 hours, sort of at the minimum. Yeah, so yeah, I was aware that it was quite a big ask and a big impact on you having to manage that significant amount of time for 7 days at a time.
Yeah. And I think it's hard as well because obviously it was our choice that I would have the prolonged amount of time off for maternity leave. That was something that I wanted to do. Sometimes I feel like it's usually the mum that then has that time off, and the other parent returns to work because everyone's got bills to pay and things to pay for. So, you know, it's a must essentially in most households, but predominantly it does fall to the mum to then pick up the lion's share of the childcare and, you know, the nights. There's lots of mums that I speak to that say, you know, my other half's got to get up for work early in the morning. They do a job that's, you know, there's a lot of risk involved. So I just kind of leave them to it. But then I feel like it's the mum that kind of suffers more, because then it's mum that's up during the night trying to settle the baby or get the baby to sleep. The other partner then goes off to work, and then mum's left all day with the baby as well. And it's almost like being on call 24/7. Like, you know, you're the one that's got to get up and deal with them. So anyway, we hired the sleep consultant because I was like, look, this is something I really want to do. You were thankfully very supportive and said, fine, let's do it. And she basically changed our lives.
She did.
Changed our lives. And I just didn't think it seemed like too good to be true. So basically she gave us a personalized plan, didn't she? We had a video chat with her and she explained everything to us. She wrote us a plan, gave us like structure, she gave us a routine. She took away all of our stuff that we'd paid all that money for. She took away Ewan, she took away the dummy, she took away the positioner, the wedge, whatever it is, she took it away. And the first night, We all went upstairs to bed. And he started crying. Jack started crying. And you got up from bed and you went, I'm going to go sleep downstairs. And off you went.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, fine. First night was really tough.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't remember that because you were downstairs, but it was really, really tough. And I think you went to work like the next day. And I remember being like round at my brother's house and like saying to him, I don't know if I can do night 2, if it's going to be anything like last night. And then I was like starting to question like, oh, is this the right thing to do? I felt a little bit judged. Yeah. Like when you mentioned sleep training, so like people's initial reaction is like, oh, cry it out method. Oh, their baby's just going to cry and it's got to leave them to cry. And that can be really frowned upon by some people. So I felt a little bit judged and I thought, oh, last night was really hard. I don't know if I can do that again. But then I thought, no, I've got to, let me give it one more night and see how it is. Oh, actually, do you remember the first day? So we did night 1 and then naps the next day. The first nap, he slept for 8 minutes.
Yes.
8 minutes. 8 minutes. Oh my gosh, 8 minutes. But she did warn us that naps do take longer. So anyway, so went round to my brother's and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. I felt a bit judged, was quite worried. And then that's when we decided to ship him out into his bedroom.
Yes, we did.
We already had his cot up and ready. So I thought, actually, it might be better if we give each other a little bit of space. Especially if he's crying, it's hard to listen to within the same room.
It was.
So we shipped him off into his own bedroom and we put him to bed at 7 o'clock. I think he cried for around 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we did not hear anything until I think 6:30 the next morning.
Yeah.
Because I took a picture of him. I got a picture of him in his cot, in his little sleeping bag with like this grin on his face.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, like this is like, I thought it was witchery. I thought, what on earth has happened? And I was like, thank goodness that like we stuck with it. Like I'm really, really happy.
Yeah.
And then like, as we went through the process, it was bumpy, it was up and down, but on the whole, he was just getting it, wasn't he? He was just started sleeping really, really well. And since that day, since he was 4 months old and he's now about to turn 6, he's had the same routine every single night. Yeah. Same routine every single night. And bar any illness or the odd day where he tests our boundaries, which is, you know, very little. You know, he's still growing up, he's, you know, but I think we can probably count that on one hand, how many times it's been. He has slept 11 to 12 hours a night. He was then really consistent with his naps. And then do you remember, so then when we finished working with a sleep consultant, he was on a 2 nap schedule. And
I used to love 2 nap schedule.
What did you used to do?
I used to nap for 1 and then try and do a few bits around the house potentially for the second one. Yeah. But I'd nap for the first one because that was I knew that he'd sleep well for that one.
Yeah. Like he'd have 2 hours in the morning and you'd have a little nap. And that was like a turning point for me because I was like, I can have a shower, I can wash my hair, I can dry my hair, I can put a little bit of makeup on if I want to. Or even just the little thing of standing and doing the washing up or doing a load of washing and hanging out on the area. Because previously he was like glued to me and I could not put him down for love nor money.
Yeah.
So just doing things like that just made me feel, number one, I was well rested. So I feel like my head and my brain was in a far better place. Mm-hmm. I actually just felt a little bit like things were not back to normal, but I was able to keep on top of the housework a little bit more like I did before he arrived. Yeah. And just I think it gave me confidence taking him out and about. So he'd had a good nap, and I knew then that we could go for a walk, or I could take him to do the food shopping, and he wouldn't kick off because he's really overtired. He'd be quite content with kind of like looking around or whatever it might be. I think I was quite strict with like him having his naps in the cot at home. I like plan my day around, this is when we can go out. And I got so much more flexible with that the older he got. But I think I was like, I don't want to do anything to disrupt him sleeping really well. But that was good as well, because then that gave me structure and routine for my day as well. I knew when he was going to sleep, I knew how long he was going to sleep for. Then I was like, yeah, I feel really settled. And then when you were at work and going in and you weren't there like all night, on the lead up to bedtime, I felt so relaxed and so calm, because before my anxiety was through the roof, because I was like, I'm on my own, it's coming up to bedtime, I'm welcoming bedtime because I need a bit of a break, but at the same time I know he's not going to go to sleep, so I'm also dreading bedtime because I don't know what it's going to bring. I don't know how many times I'm going to be up and down the stairs in the first 15 minutes, or I don't know how many times he's going to wake, or how long he's going to be awake for. And that was like a real stress for me. It was making me so anxious. So afterwards, I was like, I know 7 o'clock's coming. I know I'm going to be able to lay him down in his cot. He's going to go to sleep happily. I can walk away. He's going to fall asleep on his own. And I know he's going to stay asleep.
Yeah.
And that just, even that might seem like a small thing, but it was everything to me. It just made me so much calmer, and just, I can do what I want for like the next 2 hours before I go to bed. I can sit and watch rubbish TV. I can do some housework. I can do nothing, or I can just go to bed myself if I really want to. Just knowing that I was having that time of him not needing me for anything, just a couple of hours of just peace, and just knowing that he was going to sleep was really, really, really good. So it was a game changer, absolute game changer. So and that stood us in really good stead for then when we transitioned him from his cot to his toddler bed, when we took the cot down. So we'd introduced the animal clock when he was about 2 years old. He was still in his cot, and that worked really, really well. We took the size of the cot off. He was 3.5. It was at Christmas time. We took the side of the cot off because he was then due to start school in the September. And we were, I say we were lucky, but we weren't, because we'd put in all that hard work to begin with, that he then stayed in his bed. We put him in his toddler bed. He was free. And we've not had any issues with him getting out of his bed or anything like that. Apart from the time when he pretends to sleepwalk. But even now he's really, really good. And also that's meant that all he needs is basically somewhere to sleep and his routine. So last night he slept at your sister's house.
Yeah.
Good as gold going to bed. He sleeps at my mum's house once a week and has done for the last few years. And once again, it was a really easy to follow routine that whoever was looking after him can do. He knows it himself, and he knows that going to sleep is all business. It's, I'm going to sleep, I'm going into my bed, and all I'm going to do when I get into bed is go to sleep. No messing around or anything like that. So it's meant that he's able to go to other people's houses, or stay away from us, or us go out and someone come and babysit him while we go out. So it's given us a load of freedom as well. And like, I just don't feel like we're ever worried about when he goes to sleep somewhere else or someone's babysitting, because it's like, we know he's going to not mess around, he's just going to go to sleep. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. And even if he's staying with someone that might be tempted just to let him stay up a little bit longer, just because as a bit of a treat, he's got no qualms about saying, I'm tired now, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah.
and then off he goes, doesn't he? Just makes his way up.
Yeah.
Gets himself settled, and no issues.
Yeah. definitely. So it's stood us in good stead. Also, at the end of last year, we had his diagnosis of autism, and I follow parents of autistic children. I follow a lot of them on TikTok, and there's this one particular family, and their little boy is around Jack's age, and he takes hours to go to sleep, and then he's then up for the day at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I always wonder what Jack would be like, or how he would be his ability to cope with his diagnosis if he slept really badly, if he was going to bed really late, or he wasn't getting 11 hours sleep at night. I always wonder what impact that would have on his behaviour and his emotional state, really.
Yeah. I think sort of tiredness, especially that sort of tiredness, makes everyone cranky, don't they? Sort of no matter where you're adult, child, whatever it be. So how sort of tired he could potentially be if he didn't sleep properly, that would have a massive impact on him, sort of the way he behaved, his temperament, how emotional he'd be. You'd have a nightmare trying to get him dressed in the mornings. School would just be God knows what would happen at school.
Mm.
So I don't know, he'd go in there and just be sort of uncontrollable, or maybe just fall asleep somewhere for a bit, recharge himself, and then cause more havoc. Really hard.
It always makes you wonder about that. Yeah. So a year after we worked with that sleep consultant, she then obviously reached out, didn't she? And she was like, "Oh, I'm not consulting anymore directly with families. I'm taking on parents who I previously worked with to train them as sleep consultants."
Yes.
And I was like, yes, I want to do that, because at the time I was in the police. I was a police officer. So obviously helping people was something I enjoyed doing. But actually when we'd finished working with the consultant, I felt like, why does no one else know about this? Like, why doesn't anyone else, why isn't this more kind of, like, it felt a bit taboo, sleep training. It felt a bit taboo. But I was like, this is amazing. Like, he sleeps, we sleep. This is really, really great. And I was always like interested in infant sleep and child sleep, and it's something that interested me. So when she reached out, I was like, yes, I absolutely want to do that. So I obviously did my training with her, certified with her, and then I started having my own clients, and I really enjoyed it. It was brilliant. The results I got for my clients and families was brilliant. But obviously I was still a police officer at the same time, so I was doing both jobs. I was doing the sleep stuff on the side, but work was really busy as well. So that was about kind of 3.5 years that I was doing it both at the same time. And then the summer before Jack started school, I was like, I want my evenings and weekends back. I'm going to drop the sleep stuff for the moment. I just want to really concentrate on the last summer, really, before he started school. And so I dropped the sleep stuff, and he started school, and obviously that's when he struggled. He massively struggled. He massively struggled at school, and I thought, thank God I don't have 2 jobs to contend with, plus all of his struggles at school. And then that was reception class, and then we got the ball rolling with like diagnosis and stuff. And then by the end of last year, we obviously got his diagnosis, which was great. And that's when I left the police as well, because it was. I was like, I love working with families and babies and children more than some of the general public. And actually, it was just something that I've obviously loved it, but I was really torn between kind of the 2 careers. And this is the one that I chose. So November, stopped being a police officer, resigned, gone, and then started up the business, Super Simple Sleep, and that's where we are today, really. So this is first episode of the podcast series. And like I said, it's just an insight into kind of our parenting journey and how I got to kind of where I am now. So thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Anytime at all.
Brilliant. Shall we go and have a cup of tea?
Let's go and have a cup of tea.
Brilliant. Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. See you everyone on the next episode.